Hi everyone and welcome to Cooking in Manhattan. As you know, us Italians eat a lot of seafood for the holidays. So today I want to show you a recipe with branzino that will come out juicy and moist and will also make for a very easy cleanup. It's branzino in a salt crust. This recipe calls for very few ingredients and it couldn't be easier. Once you've managed this, you're gonna make this recipe over and over again because it's really so good and flavorful. So we have 2 branzinos. I asked my fishmonger to remove the guts from the inside but also leave the scales. This is incredibly important because the scales will mix together with the salt, and when you clean everything up, it will actually remove the skin together. Then we have obviously some kosher salt, and inside of the branzino we are going to put some aromatics. I have sage, rosemary and orange. So this is a real Mediterranean recipe. So first step is stuffing our wonderful branzino. Branzino is a typical traditional Mediterranean seafood, so really is a wonderful Mediterranean recipe when you can find it at the fishmonger and you know that this is really going to inspire you in making something special. So I stuffed it first with the rosemary, then I'm going to insert a couple of slices of orange. I left the rind as well. I think it gives a little bit more of a kick to the flavor. And obviously, since we are putting so much salt on the outside, we don't need to salt it on the inside. And then lastly, a couple of leaves of sage to give it some nice hearty and Greek flavor to it. Here we go. And now we're ready to coat it in salt. In my baking sheet coated with some parchment paper, I put some salt and I'm adding a little bit more. You have to have more or less a ½ inch of salt at the bottom. I promise you that even if we're using so much salt, this recipe will not be salty at all, because the fact that we have the scales outside of the skin of the branzino will attract all the salt. So you can actually crack open the salt and the skin together and reveal a very moist flesh of the branzino. I am positioning the branzinos in my pan, and I will make sure that they actually are in the same direction. Usually when you cook seafood together and it's 2 or more fishes, you want to actually position it so that the tail is opposed to the head of the next one. But in this case, I'll show you exactly why we need to do the opposite. And now more salt on top. We're going to add salt on top of each single one of the branzinos, but we are avoiding the head. There is a reason for this, and the reason is that when during the cooking process the eye of the branzino turns white, then that is exactly when we have to stop cooking it. This recipe actually originated in ancient Egypt and then it arrived in Portugal and finally in Italy. So it's really a very Mediterranean recipe, and you will have all your guests and all your friends wowed by this. So I am spreading the salt so that it actually coats everything. Adding a little bit more over here. Like I said, you have to disregard the heads, but you can also disregard the tails. It's not really necessary to cover the tails. And now that everything is covered pretty much entirely, we are going to put it in the oven at 400 degrees for more or less 35 to 40 minutes. And when the eye gets white, and that's why you leave everything uncovered, so when the eye of the branzino becomes white, that's when the branzino is cooked. We are ready to get the branzino out of the oven. Here we go. Oh, you see? The eye of the branzino is perfectly white, which means that the flesh inside is perfectly cooked. So now we just have to try it. And now we are ready to remove the salt and break the crust. See, it comes off in one piece, and then take a peek inside. Here we go. I'm going to cut through the skin, and here it is. Do you see the juicy and moist flesh of the branzino? And now I'm gonna finish cutting it through and then we can taste it. So we are ready to taste the branzino in salt crust. But first, my viewers, do you see how moist this is? If you cook your seafood in a sea salt crust, you will never have ever again some dry seafood, and you will really enjoy it. And it's also very light and kind of fat-free, so it's good on your waist as well. And now let's try it. It is so moist and it's so juicy inside. This is absolutely the best way to cook seafood. If you have any question about this or any other recipe, you can Twitter me a message at this address over here. And I will see you again on the next Cooking in Manhattan. Ciao!